month later, I wake up in ICU and doctors come rushing in. Oh my gosh, Mr. Lewandowski, you're not supposed to be here. And what I discovered, what the doctors told me, was I was the number one sickest patient in the Emory healthcare system.
Like millions of people around the world, we need to work. Some do it for the money, others do it for the recognition. And if you're lucky, you do it because you love it. But finding purpose and passion in your work can be easier said than done, and the path to success can be unpredictable at best. Maybe you love your job, and maybe you hate it, or maybe you're just going through the motions. But if you're looking for some inspiration, then I've got one question for you. Are you consuming your career, or is it consuming you? Welcome to Consuming Careers. Welcome to the Consuming Careers podcast, where we feed the body and soul of your work. And today on Consuming Careers, we're talking with Mitch Lewandowski, where we'll be discussing how finding purpose in your career and life is often found when you don't actually focus on your career. And in this episode, Mitch Lewandowski will challenge you to think others first and give you some practical tools that demonstrate when you elevate the tide of others, you rise with that same tide. Let's jump right into our interview with Mitch. Well, welcome back to the Consuming Careers podcast, and I'm so excited to introduce to you our guest today. It's Mitch Lewandowski. Mitch, how are we doing today?
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for the very kind invite. I hope the bar is low today, so I don't let anybody down. But no, it's great to be here. Thanks a lot.
We keep the bar low for everybody, so awesome. You're not the only one. You've asked to get together here at Whitetail Coffee and Bicycle, or is it Whitetail Bicycle and Coffee Shop? Which is maybe bicycles are the bigger revenue generator here.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure which one it is, but I think it's Whitetail Spend Your Money Here Company.
Yes.
And so, the joke is when you walk in here, you pretend like you're buying a coffee, but it has a $13,000 invoice on it.
Exactly. Well, we're in downtown Milton, Georgia, so don't you live near here? You're in the Milton area, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm about a mile and a half away, so I've got location services turned off right now, so my wife doesn't know where I'm at. She's on a plane, so it'll be harder for her to find me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, this is really an amazing shop. Great coffee. Bicycle selection is awesome. What a great ambiance. So, but let's get into your career a little bit. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background, kind of an overview of where you started and kind of how you got to where we are today?
Yeah, so just to back up, I grew up in Southwest Michigan, single-parent family, and just a very, kind of like a small town, simple world that I was living in, and people would ask me that. I remember getting asked this question a lot of times when I was young. You're not from around here, are you? And I said, that's the plan.
That's the whole
so I was
idea.
doing Prison Break at 12. and just growing up where I did, my mom, again, single-parent family, she loved me a lot, but the ability to provide and to create a future for us was quite limited. And I remember I was just talking about this at a workshop I was leading in L.A. last week. When I was 16 years old, it was 1982, so you get it, I'm 42 years old.
Yep.
I wrote on my mirror, I wrote down, ask for the world, and if you only get a continent or two, you didn't do so bad. And
nice.
So I was just getting this mindset of, there's more out there, there's more to be had, there's more to be experienced. Yep. And I'm sure we'll get into some of my bad choices as well, but there's more to life than this, and I wanted to experience it.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure if we've talked about this, but we're both from Michigan. So I grew up in southeastern Michigan, born in Livonia, Ann Arbor, Detroit area, and then migrated to Toledo, which you'll appreciate, which I always say is a great place to be from.
No. We say that from where I'm from. Get your own from.
That's so funny. And then you went to Kellogg University, correct, in Battle Creek?
I was going to school there,
yep.
And my interest from high school was to be an architect.
Okay.
I always wanted to be an architect. I loved drawing things, and we had a joke in my freshman year in college. The joke was, how do you get the architect off your front porch? This is like 1984, 1985, and I think we're about the same age. And the answer was you pay them for the pizza. We had unemployment at 10%. Interest rates were, I think, 15, 16, 18%.
Wow.
Nothing was going on. So I was drawing parking lots in industrial warehouse complexes, just to do stuff when I was going to school. So
Yeah. And that was in Michigan, right?
That was in Michigan.
And didn't you move out to California at some point?
I did. That sounds really good, but I didn't. But I like the story. Let's go with that. Yeah,
Let's
I moved
do
to
it.
California. I actually moved to South Florida.
Okay.
My wife is from California. In in '86, I spent a little bit of time in Peru, in Lima, back when it was really completely not safe to live there. It was like martial law. Shining Path was like bombing everything, but I was 20 and naive, and I thought, hey, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
So I spent a long winter in Peru, which was their summer. Came back and then went to Miami in 1988 and spent 20 years down in South Florida before moving here to Atlanta.
Okay. And what took you down there? Like why and what were you doing there?
Remember that you're not from around here, are you?
Yes.
And that's the plan?
Yes.
It was always my plan to get out, and once I'd experienced being in South America, number one, I loved the experience of a different culture.
Yeah.
That was my first, real experience. But just getting in that and seeing what it was like and I refer to, I often say I have an affection for people of other. And so being in Lima, experiencing a different culture, I'm like, this is very, very cool. Miami was as far south as I could get, i.e. warm and not cold. And it was a very diverse culture. So I intentionally sought to move to Miami to experience a cool culture and experience nice, warm winters.
Yeah. So how did that play out? Was that formative or?
Very formative, very formative. So I actually moved down there for a lot of the wrong reasons. Think about being in your mid-20s, single, and being predisposed to poor decision-making.
Weren't we all?
Well, I don't know, man. Probably all of us, but
yes,
I was definitely drinking from the tall glass of bad choices. So moved down there for the wrong reasons, but got involved with a very cool business where I was doing a ton of international travel, and that particular role, had me going. I'd be in Paris one week, and I would be in Nicaragua the next week, and then I'd be, you just name it. I was getting to go there. And it gave me a lot of exposure, again, to this my great affection for people of other. It gave me a lot of exposure to different cultures, different worldviews, different socioeconomics. And not only did I really, really like it, I found that being engaged, and it developed a better sense of engagement. I guess that's a good way to put it. Like how to relate to people from another mindset, worldview,
yes,
you name it, spiritual view, their views on politics, and you name it, and just gave me this skill set early to engage others, and that was one of the big formative things for me in my early professional journey.
So how far along are we in your career at this point?
12
years in.
12 years old. 25, 26.
Feels like that.
25. This is mid-20s.
Okay, mid-20s. So far, do you feel like you're on track?
No.
Okay, so you're still figuring things out. Still trying to
figure
out if you want to be an architect.
That was a hot mess, Bruce.
It's like George Costanza. You still want to be an architect. Like he wasn't even an architect. So
I found that I was a salesperson trapped in an architect's body.
Oh, that's good.
And so even though I had a passion for architecture, I found that I was, number one, architectural. I love the design, but the rules and constraints of architecture are what I found to be limiting. And again, with zero job market at that time, and then having a few jobs in sales and say, hey, wow, I kind of like this and I've got a knack for it.
Yeah.
And so I found myself going on the sales side of business profession, deal making, putting larger complex things together.
Great.
And getting people, getting good at that. I just guess we'll put it that.
Yeah. So you kind of went down that path of marketing, sales in the architectural kind of environment.
Actually, I had stepped away from architecture, got involved in international sales with a few very cool companies, and then it wasn't until 1995 maybe I got back into architectural type sales, and that sent me on a particular long and wonderful career journey in building products. And so it was funny because when I first, and this will be an interesting story for you, so I was living in Miami and living in Miami Beach at the time, and I remember seeing this ad in the newspaper, and I'm just Miami Herald, and I was cruising the kind of read it, and I saw this. I'm going to butcher this, but it basically said high-end architectural sales rep wanted, and I'm like, well, I know architecture. I know about high-end, I think large deals.
I'm pretty high-end.
Yeah. I think I'm high-end too, but my wife tells me I'm more like Walmart and Target. And I'm like, oh, cool. So these things, if you Google it, it's called a fax machine.
Yes.
Yeah, you remember those things, right?
Yes.
You still got one in your car?
Not anymore.
Just checking, asking for a friend. So I faxed in a resume, and I got a call a couple weeks later. And they say, hey, we want you to come in for this interview. And I go in and say, hey, we're getting ready to launch these window and door products into South Florida. We had just had Hurricane Andrew.
Wow.
Kind of wiped everything off the face of the earth. And impact-rated products were just coming to market. Say, hey, we're getting ready to launch these impact-rated, certified products in the South Florida market. We're looking for somebody to help us get this up and going. I'm like, wow, that looks really cool. And having gone through Hurricane Andrew, having lots of friends losing their roofs, there was a connection to that, and I was helping people during Hurricane Andrew for months at a time, and so there was a lot attached to that. So I saw the protecting people from hurricanes, the architectural thing. This is a larger ticket, complex deal which I could connect with. I'm like, this sounds cool. So I go in for this interview. I'm like, I want this job. So I send a letter to the president of this company, and I basically told him why he should hire me. So I get called in. I go in to see this guy. He goes, hey, listen, it's down to you and this guy with like 5 years experience.
Yeah.
You don't know Jack. I'm like, who's Jack? And he says, if you can convince me to hire you, you're probably going to do okay. And so he hired me, and I didn't know anything about it. It was windows and doors at the time.
So what do you think that decision factor was? Was your passion around their purpose? Was it kind of just you were just excited about a new opportunity and willing to do whatever it took?
Yeah, I think if I were to kind of give it a package, a guy who used to work for me once said, Mitch, two people can make a decision here. And I realized early on in life is if I do want something, I shouldn't wait for other people to decide for me. And in sales, as you know, in sales, other people can decide how much you're going to get paid, or you can decide how much you want to get paid. And so I think that's what it was. Is I decided I wanted to get this job, and so I'm not asking him for the job. I'm not like, hey, can you hire me, please?
Right.
The what do you call it? The crumbs off the end of the table. No, I want this job. I'd love to do this job, and I want you to hire me. And so that's repeated itself a couple times, in my business journey.
So you've added something to this story, and that's you found meaning in the product and services that you were offering that met a need to your customer, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't hear that around in the 20s, right? So here we've moved into maybe a different part of your career that might be
I was like
a little
28, I think, at the time. Right around
looking for
there.
a little more meaning or just a little more substance, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Or was it that there's just an excuse, right?
It was starting to kick in. It was starting to kick in, versus just deal. Like I talk about the thrill of the deal, the thrill of the hunt, and then the reality of the emptiness of that. It's like whatever. And as we get further on in my career, some of the things that we'll get there, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more attached to what I do today, and it's not so much about the deal. My wife says, you're a sociopathic deal maker. You have to be putting things together, which is true. But I only want to. Again, we'll get into that. But what's attached to that today is very different than what was attached to that in my late 20s.
So last night I was looking at your background on LinkedIn, and I was scrolling back on your posts, and by golly, you post a lot on LinkedIn.
No.
So it took me literally a half an hour to go backward in your posts, at least 5 years.
Wow.
Just loading all these stories. Okay. Now my point is, in your profile it says to catalyze, equip, and empower. And what I was looking for is when you added that to your profile.
It says that on my profile?
It says that at the
Really?
very,
Where?
right at the top. You know this. It says it right at the top.
Yeah.
Catalyze, equip, and empower. And I'm like, was that something that just popped up in the last year, or is it 5 years ago? So when did that kind of take shape in your mind where you wanted to catalyze, equip, and empower? And I'm assuming that's other people, not yourself.
Yeah, that's been there for a while. And goodness, Bruce, I couldn't tell you when I put that there. That's a term I came up with years back, and I often think about things in like 3 parts. You hear people joke around like a sermon should have more than 3 parts: a beginning, a middle, and an end, and make sure you end on time. But I often think in like kind of like 3-part summaries of things. And when I started thinking about, okay, what's the thing that I can do the most for the people that I'm involved in and I'm investing in, and whether it's what I do at work, what I do it with my family, my friends here in the cycling community, at church and things like that. But getting somebody like I was in a coaching session last week, and I was saying to this guy, I said, listen, I want you to be the best version of yourself that you want to be, that you're willing to be. I'm not going to take you to a place where you don't want to go. I'm not going to talk you into something that you don't want to do. So backing that up to this catalyze, equip, and empower. Catalyze basically gets somebody going. I always meet people or companies exactly where they're at. I say, I want to qualify this. I say, I don't care where you're at, Bruce. What I mean by that is it's inconsequential to me where somebody was at in their career and even their ability to be coached or taught, or their professional journey. But I want to take them from where they're at and get them going, whatever that going is. And then to equip them is, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to fix your bike for you, I'm going to teach you how to fish, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to teach you and walk along the way with you on your journey of being equipped. And then empower is almost like a coach on the sideline. I've empowered you, I'm encouraging you, I'm cheering you along. And so that's been a big part of my whole career jam, and whatever I've done has been in and around those 3 areas. I'm going to work with this team that I've inherited. I've been parachuted in to some businesses where they say, hey, can you help us? And I'm like, why? It doesn't seem like the burnt building's that on fire. It's like 7 fire trucks outside.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we're doing really, really well. We just want to get better. Or an executive who is saying, I've reached this certain place. I really like where I've gone, but what if there's more? Irrelevant to what's going on, that catalyze, equip, and empower has just been a good way for me to see how to engage people and how to engage organizations.
So I mean, that's just who you are, right? That's just who you are.
That's my DNA. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get? I mean, really, that's my question. Is like, how did you get from being the self-absorbed 25-year-old, don't want to be here, rather be somewhere else, especially if it's a different language environment, to wanting to pour into people and companies and groups to catalyze, equip, and empower them? Like, how did you get there?
Yeah. How much time we got? I would say a couple things to that. Number one is realizing, I remember when I was 28, 29 years old, and I started going to this really cool, I thought it was cool. I didn't know any better, but it was cool to me. This cool little Baptist church down in Miami. And one of I think it was an elder, he wanted to interview me just to get to know me better as a member. He goes, hey, what kind of volunteer things have you done, And I was like...
You mean for other people?
Exactly. I made dinner last night, and there was this aha moment. Again, I was 28, 29 years old. There was this aha moment where I realized, wow, I was seeing people like, in and around Miami being involved in the lives of other people for the benefit of other people. And I was like, it was like crickets, somebody give me some help here, get the paddles out, clear. And I just never had a heart for other people. I was like, wow, that was like a big light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
And I realized what was driving that is I was always seeking something for me to make me feel good.
Yeah.
And that in itself was just such a terrible lie. Like, I'm trying to fill my life with fun, pleasure, toys, stuff, success, accolades. Oh, I was in Brazil last weekend, and then we flew first class to, Belgium, and, all this, look at me. And I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
But it was that light bulb moment where I realized this isn't giving me anything of true value, worth. And so then I started, like, I don't even remember the first thing I volunteered for. I don't even remember, but I remember the first time I went and did something for somebody else. There was a sense of satisfaction that was attached to it that I'm not sure how to explain, but it was the experiencing doing something just for somebody else's good. I was like, wow, this is good for. It's weird because it's like you're seeing, like, when you create a better situation for somebody else, and you're seeing how it makes them better. We could say we're blessing them, or we're equipping them, we're making them a better person. And then it's like, and I got so much out of this too. And then you just like almost feel guilty that you're like, you got so much enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be for you. But then it's like, wait a second, I did something for this person, and I also won and benefit. So it's a win-win. It's like, oh my gosh. And so going again to this like late 20s and now 30 years later, how that's just a part of my DNA now. Again, wherever I go, and I talk about people with people, like where you live, work, and play. A lot of people have their work, they have their play, whether they're into cycling like I am, or golf, or scuba diving, or whatever, triathlons. And then they have their family life, and they have these these buckets of their life. And I'm like, hey, if you live, I'm maybe getting a little ahead of myself here, but if you live in like an overlaid life where you live, where you work, and where you play, and you serve other people altruistically in all these areas of your life, you're always giving to other people. They're benefiting, and you're benefiting. And that whole thing about, just doing somebody, like, there's three reasons why people, getting off track here, but oh well, there's three reasons why people do things. Fear of like a retribution or consequence, desire for something, like, hey, if I do this I win, or the third one is altruism. And this is where I feel that I spend most of my time, not always, because sometimes I'm like, oh crap, I better get this done because I'm late on a report, or if I do this, I get a reward. But man, when I'm in this place of altruism, I'm just doing something for somebody else. I had a call with a guy today. He's looking at a particular business opportunity. I said, hey, if you need an extra set of eyes on that you just want somebody to look at that, I am happy to look at it for you. He's a buddy of mine that lives out of state. But there's nothing in it for me,
Right.
Or somebody gets a flat tire on a bike ride, and I stop and help them fix their tire. I'm doing it to help them. And then we may ride back 2 hours together by ourselves and have a great time, but it's like I didn't miss anything by getting dropped out of the ride to help this guy or this person.
So, Mitch, when I was 25, I would say Mitch is full of crap.
Mitch is full of crap.
Like, he's never going to make it, with that kind of attitude. Yeah, that's nice and all, and that's nice for those nonprofits to do that, and they make some money doing that because they get funded somehow. But making, you described that switch that flipped, and somehow you got a taste of altruism. And I'd love to tap into how do you make that happen, especially we live in we're in Milton. It's an amazing area, very affluent, and we have capacity, and we have bandwidth in our lives to share. But I know there's a lot of people out there that just don't either feel like they have the capacity, maybe they don't have the energy or the time. Would you say there are little steps they could take towards that? Because, look, I see people all the time that are just in self-preservation mode, right? So is there a way to break out of that cycle?
Yeah, well, a couple things come to mind, and through my life, and I know just from seeing some of the things you'd like to talk about, we're going to talk about some challenges that I've experienced. But through my life, things have not always been on a high, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. You know, I'm I'm like most people. I'm not always at some high place. But what I've found is irrelevant to where I'm at in any of these particular buckets. I have to decide, who I want to be, how do I want to live, and I can operate from a mindset of scarcity, or I can operate from a mindset of abundance. So even if I've been very ill in the past, and if I say, hey, you know what can I do for somebody else today? How can I impact the lives of somebody else? That's also getting me out of my own head. Because I can stare at my belly button, woe is me, I lost that big deal, this bike broke, I'm sick, a family member's ill, we lost a friend, whatever life throws at me, and I can look at that and let that identify who I am.
Yeah,
and
that's
how
great.
I'm going to act. Or I can say, what can I do today to benefit somebody else?
That's awesome. So I'm going to take a sidestep here and just say how good this cortado that I'm drinking is amazing. I don't know if you've ever had one of these.
I've had a lot of things here. It's funny because when I go in, what you saw today when we went over to the coffee shop section is I'll say to Sean, hey, what do you want to make me today?
Yeah.
Make me something cool. Because, I have regular things that I get.
Yeah.
But one, Sean's a buddy of mine, and I love the experience of whatever he makes for me.
Yeah.
And so I can't even remember what this is. I should have written it down. But it was just like, dude, make me something cool. And he goes, okay, mate, I got you. He's from South Africa. He's got this really cool accent. Actually, a buddy of mine today that I was talking to was from South Africa. The out-of-state guy on the development project. And it's cool just to experience him making something for me that he's investing in to say, I want you to experience this.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, this is really a unique place. So I think sounds like it has some real importance or some significance to you. So let's talk a little bit about that because you love biking. And this is if I didn't already say it, it is a combined bike shop and coffee shop in a garage. Big garage door.
It is.
You can hear the cars going by. Open air.
Got the big roll up doors. It's in Milton. So I've been a cyclist. I've been into cycling for over 50 years.
Wow.
When I was in
diapers.
Man, when I have a picture somewhere floating around the house from the say 1969. I was 4 years old. My mom got me 4 or 5 years old. Got me a 20-inch Schwinn single-speed, training wheels, the whole nine. I got the patent leather boots on. I got the
233 pounds.
299 pounds. I got the white T-shirt on, and I'm sitting on this bike in front of our house like a boss. And I wanted my mom to take the training wheels off, so she finally took the training wheels off, or got a friend to take them off. And I'd say, okay, I need a place where some momentum so I can get going. So there's this kind of like downhill sidewalk. It goes down at an angle towards the front yard. So I'm like, that'll help me. So I get going. I'm like going down the hill, and it's like, yeah, I'm balancing. I got it. At the end, there's a curb. And I'm so excited, and I don't even realize how to stop the bike. I hit the curb. I endo over the bike into the front yard. I get up. This is awesome. I was totally, absolutely hooked from then on. And so, cycling has always been a hobby, passion, interest of mine. I'm into all things cycling. I love fixing bikes. I love riding bikes. I believe that the number of bikes you should have is the number that you have plus one. So it's called the N+1 syndrome. My wife came in the basement the other day, and I was helping two of my friends fix their bikes. And she goes downstairs. She goes, what's going on down here? She goes, this is like friggin' Pinocchio's bicycle workshop. Where'd all these bikes come from? I'm like, I've had these a while.
Look away.
I've had these a while.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here, folks. Just move along. So just all things cycling, and for me, it doesn't have to be like I've got some real high-end collector bikes. Mm-hmm. I've got some old beater bikes. I've got things that are 50 years old and across the spectrum. But when I meet somebody else that's into cycling, I don't care what they have. Guy's got a $300 Walmart bike and he loves it. I'm like, dude, that is so cool. Versus, why don't you have the expensive things? You go away from me. Where your 10 lines? No, that's not me.
Yeah. Well, you've talked a lot about cycling as being your, your mission field, your a place where you plug in even beyond career, work, that it's really another extension of who you are
Yeah.
and what you're kind of wrapped around your passion and your purpose.
Yeah.
Tell me what's happening in the biking community that draws you in and where you're really kind of plugging in.
Yeah, so let me give you kind of like three boxes just to look at. One is whenever I go ride, I'm always asking myself, how can I show up here to help other people and be available for other people? When I used to ride, I used to race, and I was fairly good at racing, and I was a sprinter by race type. So lots of watts, last 100 yards. A buddy of mine that used to race with me from Brazil, he goes, Mitch, there was never first loser. Okay? Nobody ever remembers who took second.
That's right.
So don't worry about the whole race until 100 yards to go. And then, so I was really into it for the racing thing and doing really well, but then shifting into, okay, how can I show up for other people? That became very important. And then there's several local cycling groups I'm involved in, and that's how I like to show up to those groups. So if I'm feeling really fit and really fast, it's not about me showing everybody how fit I am. It's, okay, how can I use that fitness to help other people? Or if I'm feeling very, very slow, and let's just say I'm going to get dropped off the back because I'm feeling slow, who else is going off the back that I can ride with and not having to be alone? But there's a couple nonprofits that have a care for. One is the Van Purser Foundation, which was founded in memory of Van Purser, who was basically a patriarch of the Atlanta cycling community. And he was very intentional in giving back to others. And he was a fantastic mentor to me and one of the most impactful people in my life. So he passed about 4 years ago, and we have an annual fundraising ride called the All for One 100, which just happened a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And we had several hundred cyclists come and be involved in that. And I did not ride in that event. I had signed up to help out and volunteer. So that's just that's one way, and I've got a deep care for that nonprofit. Yeah. And then there's another one through Metro Atlanta Cycling, which is in Atlanta, and they started about 15 years ago a ride called the One Love Century, and the One Love Century is a 100% fundraiser to help inner city and underprivileged kids get into cycling.
Great.
And growing up in a single parent family where we didn't have a car, I think, until I was like 12. We had 8 years without a phone. We didn't have a TV, until I was around 12 as well. We grew up with we used to say that they turned the sunlight off on our street because we didn't pay the electric bill. You get the picture? There was poor, and then we would go to visit the poor people to see what people looked like that had things. So when I learned about Metro Atlanta Cycling doing what they did and why they did it, I was like, oh, I can really connect with that. So I will actually be an event on Saturday that they're hosting. And this spring I called up one of the board members, Euphemia, and said, hey, I got this idea. I want to do a gear roundup. We called it the first annual One Love Gear Roundup. I just made it up and basically got the local cycling community where we live. And as you know, we're in Milton. The average person here has a different resource level than somebody who's doesn't have what we have. Sure. And I just reached out to the community and said, hey, we're going to do this gear roundup. And we collected about $40,000 in cycling equipment.
Wow.
And my basement had a lot of stuff in it. And some of the board members came up and they brought their race trailer. We filled the race trailer. It was bikes, cycling gear, helmets, wheels. I had people that will be left nameless because they didn't want I had people dropping off boxes of brand new cycling clothing.
Nice.
Like, oh, here's a $5,000 box of all new cycling clothing.
That's fantastic.
And people dropping off bikes. It was crazy. $300 cycling helmets, brand new. I was like, oh my gosh. But here, take it. But seeing people, when you give people a reason, this is what's interesting. When you give people a reason to do something for others that they can connect to, people will take their time, their talent, and their treasures and apply it to that. And sometimes they just need a nudge or a little bit of direction. And using my, I don't know, because I am in sales, I can use those I have a particular set of skills. I can use those for good, not just for myself. Let's put it that way. So,
That is
anyway,
fantastic,
those
man.
are some areas where I love.
What an impact. That's really really fantastic. Hey, I want to get back to kind of your career. So, you and I met. I don't know. We might have met a year and a half ago, and became fast friends. And now we of course serve on a board together
In prison.
We have the same parole officer. But you had a pretty
John Dance.
That's
P.O. We love you, John.
You had a pretty cataclysmic event happen a couple of years ago, and I want you to kind of walk through that a little bit, kind of coming up to it, kind of that experience, and maybe how has that reframed the way you, if it has, how has it reframed the way you work, you engage, you communicate? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So, and for your audience, for those of you that don't know, a little bit over 2 years ago, I like a lot of people, I got COVID, but my experience with COVID was on the more extreme side, and so I went into the emergency room with a blood oxygen level of 60 and passed out in the emergency room. And a month later, I wake up in ICU, and doctors come rushing in. Oh my gosh, Mr. Lewandowski, you're not supposed to be here. And I was like, I was just in Singapore, and I had vivid dreams. I had to be convinced that I was not in Singapore, and what I discovered, what the doctors told me, was I was the number one sickest patient in the Emory healthcare system.
Wow.
I had COVID, severe COVID. I had MRSA. I had, there was 5 different things that I had, and they were all individually life-threatening. I had a punctured lung, pneumonia, some other things, and they said you were on the 0%. Like nobody come. I mean, I had doctors and people in the medical profession coming to visit me for weeks, saying things like, "No one's come back from where you were at."
Wow.
We live our whole professional life hoping to meet somebody like you, a miracle patient. This is the reason why we do what we do. I mean, it's like I'm getting emotional even thinking about this is the reason why we do what we do, in the hopes of somebody being able to beat all the odds. And you defied it. There's no reason why you're supposed to be here.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so I was a month in a coma, and when I woke up, I had completely atrophied. I had zero muscle mass. All I had was my bones and the skin hanging down, and had to learn to walk and talk again. And so when I was in the hospital, not being able to, it was interesting because not being able to do anything, I tell people this is the most difficult thing I've ever been through, but it was also the richest time ever. And so, I look at the world through a spiritual kingdom worldview, and I said, hey, you know what? God's plan A is in place. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't have to worry about what's going to fill in the blank. And so I had this peace in the hospital. And the doctors and the nurses would say, hey, you got to keep an open mind here. And of course I couldn't talk. I'm like, cool. I can't move. It's like, and they even had me like strapped down to the bed, and I was laughing inside. I was like, what am I going to do? Bold for the fire escape? Like freaking do who's the guy from Mission Impossible? Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Do a Tom Cruise out the door. I just like, you can't move it up. Anyway, so they said you got to keep an open mind. People recover differently. You're not supposed to be here to start with, so you may walk again, you may talk again, you may they give me the whole kind of menu of expectations.
Or you may not.
Yeah, and I'm like, cool. That's and maybe I was oversimplifying at the time, but it was just like, okay, I whatever is going to happen, I'm okay with that. And so I had a lot of peace, and then a couple of weeks later, they moved me into rehab, intensive rehab, and I was like. I have issues, Bruce. Most of them are obvious, but there's a whole bunch that aren't. You may want to delete
We're
all this.
working on those.
So I'm watching the TV's on. I still can't talk. I can barely move my hands on a device yet. It's like 5 minutes to do a text message. No voice to text right now. And I saw an ad for the new, not Mission Impossible, the new Matrix movie.
Yeah.
Coming out at Christmas. I'm thinking, if I can just be home for Christmas, I can go watch the Matrix movie with my buddies. So I hobbled together a text And I sent it out to a bunch of people, and they're all freaking out that they're getting a text from me, but they knew I was alive and awake.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if I can be home by Christmas. So they sent me to intensive rehab down at Emory in the city and say that now giving you some time point of reference, like on the 21st of September, 20th of September.
Yep.
I had just taken my first steps on the 16th of September, like moving feet on the ground, and made my first word sounds on the 16th of September. So 16th, first steps, first voice sounds.
And that's a month and a half after going in the hospital.
Yeah, it's a ways in. And so they moved me into intensive rehab on the 20th. I'm thinking, okay, Christmas, right? 9 days later, they send me home. They say, you don't need to be here anymore. You've completely blown away everything.
Oh, my gosh.
So I go from first steps to I'm going home. I'm walking up and down steps. I'm able to take care of certain personal necessities. I'll just leave it that way.
And I'm sure your family appreciated that.
I don't know about them, but I was appreciating it.
Listen, Mitch,
I had two goals: go up steps and to take care of personal things. That's it.
I've seen the pictures, and they're out there for anyone to see on your LinkedIn page, and you write extensively about that experience.
Yeah.
But there's one picture of you laying in the bed with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
That is horrific.
Yeah.
Like, this guy isn't going to make it. And then you have some more pictures. Another one where, like, skin and bones.
Yeah.
And then a few later where it's a different person. It's a different person who walked out of that hospital.
Yeah. Even I have to get my thoughts about myself because I'm visualizing those pictures that I know very well. When my wife brought me home, I remember getting in the car, driving home, and it was almost like I'm watching the first Matrix when Neo's first goes back out with Morpheus and Trinity, and he goes, "Oh, I used to eat there. They had good noodles." And he's kind of like the surreal lens of the world. I felt like that scene from the Matrix, and I was like, "This is really weird." We pull into my neighborhood. Somebody, one of our friends, and I can't remember who, made one of these monster welcome home signs. It's like 50 feet long in the front yard. And a whole bunch of people out front. It was a very impactful day. And then that night, my local cycling community put together a ride that they rode over to my house. It was a Tuesday night, I think. Wednesday night, something. I don't know what. It was a night. It was an evening, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, whatever. And all of a sudden, there's like 60 riders out front of my house.
Wow.
And I went outside, trying to talk about being blessed by others. Mm-hmm. That experience of being blessed and loved and cared for by others, it's like, wow, this is rich.
Hey, let's be clear that doesn't happen by accident.
No. Plan A is always in place.
Well, that happens when that's often a response to how you've plugged into their lives, right? Yeah. If you hadn't done that, you would have just been another rider on the roster, another guy in the club, great guy to hang around with, but maybe not the one that we're going to ride over together, coordinate 60 people to show up, just to welcome him home from a very, very difficult time in his life.
Yeah, I guess you're right about that. I remember a lot of the faces of the people that were on that ride that night. And, I mean, just different stories of different riders the first time they had been on a ride and they got a flat tire and I helped them. And so many people say, hey, when I first rode with you guys, I got dropped and you came back and helped me and you rode with me, or I got a flat tire, I got a double flat, and you're the guy that just said, let's just fix it here and we'll just go back together. And so many of those people were in my front yard that night.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah.
So here we are about 2 years removed from that. So tell me, how has that really kind of impacted the way that you work, you communicate, you engage? I mean, is it more the same? Or has it really kind of colored those conversations, or maybe given you a whole new perspective What does that look like now?
Yeah, so my wife, and who I love tremendously, completely, once said, you're very intentional about what you do in your life. You're not kind of like half-baked. And when I was getting better from COVID and getting like to the place where I thought I was going to have some ability to do something, after it was almost like there was like an extra gear, and I said, okay, and I'll explain it over here. Hand is to the right, everybody on the podcast, to the right, to the left. So as I was getting better and I was getting some context, I could say, am I going to be able to make a meaningful contribution professionally, personally, spiritually, whatever. I want to be more intentional than I was before. And this big thing that I talk about these days when I get an opportunity to speak to groups is, and it comes across this way. I said, make it count. And when I speak to leadership teams, executives, I really press into them about make your life count for something, not for you, but for others. And so when I was able to get out and say, okay, I really want to make sure that the time that I have that is all extra borrowed. Want to talk about the overdue library book? I still have DVDs from Blockbuster. I swear to you, man, because those suckers need to go back. So I just have this awareness of I can redeem this time. I can use this time in the best possible way, or I can blow it. And we all notice, like, each and every one of us know what it's like to not steward well our time, our talent, and our treasures. Whether we're wasting money on something we don't need, or we're binge watching, some show when we should be doing something else. Oh, we're just sweeping the floor, taking out the trash, and turning out the lights, doing the busy work of life, but not making it count in the best possible way. So that's my big thing.
Yeah.
If I were to kind of just make it count, those three words, make my life count in the relationships that I have, the things that I do. Even when you said, hey, would you do this podcast with me? I'm like, absolutely. Am I going to do everything for me? Or you say, hey, I'd love to be on my podcast. Okay, I'm happy to do that. Somebody says, can you do this? Now, one of the things I do have to be mindful of is I only have so much capacity to not go over that.
That's right.
But to use the capacity that I have for things that make a difference, not just things that make. And so time, talent, and treasure, if I look at those three boxes, where am I going to invest my money?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on around the world right now, which we're all very aware of. It's like crazy town in the world. There's some things that we're strategically investing some of our financial resources into the lives of other people that if we weren't doing that, they wouldn't be able to do the things that they're doing. That's right. Because of where they live.
Yeah, and intention is it can be looked at in a couple different ways. So you're talking about holistically in lives. I was having this very conversation at work today about being intentional about, I'm in sales, so who I talk to, who I call, is this a good use of my time? Yeah, I only have so many hours in the day, only so many minutes in an hour, and I've got to call the right people with the right message to maximize the benefit to me and my company.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more self-serving, but it's important that I do my job well.
It's the same way, though.
Yes.
Like if you think about, we say in sales, treat everyone fair, just not everyone equal. If I have a responsibility to my company to bring in, say, $1 million a month in business, and there's 4 opportunities that are all $1 million a month, and then there's 20 opportunities that are $3,000 a month, I can't treat them all the same.
That's right.
Because this one has a greater impact on my business, my family, all the other employees that payroll is paid, salaries are paid. So am I going to be doing the busy work? I coach salespeople, and this is one of the big topics that we have is where are you spending your time? Oh, but this guy needed help on this. Like you spent 4 hours of that, and it's worth $1,500, and you didn't have time on this $400,000 deal because you were busy over here. Yeah, but he needed my help. Who gave that away?
Right.
You did.
Right.
So where are you going to spend your time at work? The same thing as where are you going to spend your time of where you want to volunteer? Where are you going to spend your time when it comes to your family? Where are you going to spend the time? Like, I think about health. We were 2 years ago at that COVID journey, and, I had to learn to walk and talk again. This, 3 weeks ago, I did a 103-mile bike ride with 12,000 feet of climbing in the North Georgia mountains. That was
Just 12,000?
Just 12. Yeah, who's counting, right? I was counting every
Well,
foot of it.
apparently you were.
Yeah, well. But what's interesting about that is I had a desired, I've done that ride in the past, pre-COVID. That was it's called Six Gaps. It's one of the biggest, hardest one-day rides in the country. Have a great passion for being in the hills. I cannot climb. I love to climb. Talent? Heck no. I'm like, put me in center, coach, because I can't even reach the basket. So I went and did that ride, and I'm on the ride, and I meet a guy from Tampa. And we're like partway through the route. He's like getting ready to ring the bell. He's like, "Where's the bell?" You know?
Yeah.
I just, come on, somebody, give me a bell. I'll just call him Tom. I said, "So what's going on?" He's like, "Oh man, he's way out. He's way outside of flatlands. Let's put it that way."
Yeah.
And so I said, "Hey, his name is Patrick. I'll just go by his first name." So I didn't know this guy at all. I said, "Hey, I ride up here a lot. I'm very familiar with the area. How about you and I just hang out? I'll ride with you. Nobody's looking for me. There's nowhere I gotta be. Why don't we just do the rest of the ride together as far as you want to go?" Again, that's take you as far as you willing, as far as you want to go at the pace you want to go. It's like, and how can you say no to that? You're halfway through.
Right.
Well, you could say no because a buddy of mine just threw in the towel and got in the sag wagon. Joey. So Patrick says, yeah. And so we just start riding together and hanging out. And, we stopped. We sometimes we stopped for 15 minutes at a time, whatever he needed. We were going at the pace that he needed to go at. We spent, probably an extra 2 hours on that last half of the ride. Had a great time, great conversations. We got back. The satisfaction that he had of being able to complete that ride was worth it to me 1,000%. He was saying, "Man, I couldn't have done this without you, and I believe that God put you in my life today for this." And I'm like, my day is complete.
That's great.
Met his wonderful girlfriend, and but I was like, man, this was so much more rewarding than just doing this. I originally set out to do this for me as a bucket list, like Survivor's ride, and I got to do this for Patrick. I'm like, this is awesome. But it brings me back to that. Are you doing this for you?
Yeah.
Or are you doing this for others?
Yeah.
And so that catalyze, equip, and empower, yada, yada, yada.
So a few questions around kind of the practical nature of how you approach career and then, maybe the bigger part of life in general. So do you have any habits in your life or rituals or a regiment that you follow on a regular basis that kind of keeps you centered, keeps you focused, keeps you on task, keeps you kind of going after your goals? Kind of, what do those look like?
Besides eBay? Just kidding.
Besides eBay.
Yeah. So they're
binging on the Matrix.
Yeah. I did used to eat there. So a couple things. Number one is because I do have a spiritual worldview on life. When I get up in the morning and I do a morning devotional prayer time, that for me, like this morning, sat down at my desk and just cleared everything out of the way and spent time together, just me and the Lord. That is not a pitch for Christianity. That is just telling everybody who's listening, that's what I do, and it works really well for me.
Okay.
I've had people say, that doesn't work for me. It's like, well, I'm not trying to make it work for you, but I know it works for me. The second thing is a couple of things. Number two is to have some kind of regular fitness workout. I've taken a couple weeks off the bike, but this morning I went down. I have a gym in the basement between all the bikes.
That's right.
Did I mention that? Between all the bikes? And I did some core exercises this morning. And when I do that, I've always got I'm a big reader, Audible. E-reader.
Yeah, me too. Love it.
And I'm 2 to 4 books a month. And so I've always got a book on. I've got this great coaching book I'm listening to, and I will stop and I will pause and I will actually put notes in my phone when that's really good. Stop.
Yeah.
Like, don't get any workout down. But I did a workout this morning. And then the other thing is just the food choices I make.
Okay.
Focus around taking care of my body. My metabolism's not what it used to be. So making wise choices what I eat. So morning devotional time, regular workout, and food choices. Those things set up all the rest of my life for more success. I'm more focused at work. I've got more energy to give to other people.
That's great. Yeah.
Oh, lastly, number 4, sleep.
Good.
I cannot tell you how valuable sleep has become for me.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be able to 5.5, 6 hours, no problem, days in a row. Like last week when I was traveling, 8 days of travel in a row. I didn't even. I had to hey Siri would sleep. I had no clue what it was. But keeping a regular sleep schedule for me, getting 7.5 to 8 hours, I'm much better person to be around.
Yeah.
You just saw me last week, like, ah.
Well, I'm a big believer in sleep, and I know my wife's laughing right now as I'm saying that. But, it's funny you say about exercise. So I run a good bit as well. And, when those endorphins
Bruce, is your bike broken?
I do not ride a bike. It's running only.
We need to talk.
But those endorphins start going, and I'm telling you, I have some crazy ideas while I'm running. Like, I'm going to start a company that's going to be making, whatever. And I'll stop and I'll put it in my phone.
Yeah.
And then after my run, I'll look at it. I'm like, that's the stupidest idea I've ever thought of.
I'm sure we can get financing for that.
But when those endorphins leave, it's like, oh, that was a really bad idea.
But it energizes you. And what I realize is when I'm doing these things in my life, it's setting me up to where I can operate better. Like when you start getting these big ideas, it's almost irrelevant that you go and do the big idea, but it's like getting you off. Like when I'm referring to the table scraps off the end of the table.
Yep.
Are you living your life with scarcity, or are you living your life in abundance? That if you ask for the world and you only get a continent or two, you didn't do so bad.
Yeah.
Are you playing into it, as John Eldridge was saying, Wild at Heart? Are you living the larger story? Are you playing to win, or are you not playing? Are you playing not to lose? It's kind of binary there.
Yeah,
it's not like kind of living. You're either really living, or you're like, man, if I could just finally get a little something off the edge of the table, man.
That's all I need.
I get my foot in the door. I hear people in sales. If I could just get my foot in the door, if I could just come, dude, tell them you want to buy their company. What? I'm like, yeah, you'll get their attention.
That's
and
right.
you can negotiate down to like $1 million deal. I just wanted you to buy one thing from me.
Hey, so speaking of, and I kind of changing topics here, but social media.
Yeah.
You have.
What's that?
You know what it is. So we've
social
media. We've talked about this in the past, and you have a very strong view on some best practices around how to use social media to your advantage, and it's not what you think. So most people approach social media, for example, LinkedIn, very me-centric. See how awesome I am, see all the things that I'm doing because our company's great or I'm great. Call me and buy from me.
Yeah, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why our stuff is so awesome.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm awesome. We're awesome.
You should buy from me.
That's right. You have a different approach. Walk me through that.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine who's going to probably listen to this podcast and laugh, Brandon Lee, he and I have had all kinds of fun conversations around what is called pitch slapping. Pitch slapping. That's P as in Paul, not any other letter earlier on in the alphabet.
Yes, this is a G-rated podcast.
This is a family show, Bruce. Let's keep it clean. Pitch slapping, where people are just out there pitching. They're just tossing their stuff out there into the ether of LinkedIn. And I'm like, I get 15 of these, 20 of these a day.
Yes.
Hey, I'm like, go jump. I used to respond back. And then I realized that's a waste of my valuable time. I don't need to. These people aren't worth it. And I love this. Hey, Mr. Lewandowski, we noticed you're fill in the blank at Symbionic. We'd love to help you scale your business through our sales methodologies.
That's right. That's right.
So pitch slapping's your sales. I can't wait to send you my PayPal account.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. So you're asking me what's my view. So now, number one, LinkedIn is it's the Facebook for business.
That's right.
It's a business-centric culture. And on LinkedIn, it's important, if you're going to use LinkedIn for good, you've got to decide, what's your purpose here to start with. Okay, so you're in business, you've got a business, you'd like to attract more customers. Okay, I get that. But what's the bigger play here? What do you want to do here? And so here's some of my things. Number one is you've got to decide who you are, be very, very clear on who you are, And who you are is your brand, and you need to be authentic about what that is.
That's right.
And so, people read my content. I was at a conference last Thursday, USC, LA, School of Architecture, and it was an event going on there, and a lady who I've known in this industry that I'm involved in for years, she goes, "Oh yeah, I read a lot of your stuff on LinkedIn. I see that you're a cyclist." And we got talking. She and her husband are into riding, which is great. She goes, "Now tell me, what is exactly that you do?" Because I tell you what, I don't see any of what you do
Stuff,
pitch
yeah.
your stuff on LinkedIn. I'm like, well, this is what I do. And I got, we had a great conversation around business coaching and people development, organizational leadership, yada, yada, the whole 9 yards about what do I do. But she goes, it's cool because you have this identity on LinkedIn. I love reading your content. And I put a lot of content out there of value for people, but I'm not pitching my stuff. And as a matter of fact, I never really pitch anything. Well, but the point is, decide who you are and understand what your brand is as a person, and then live that out. And I say what you see is what you get. So like what I post on LinkedIn is what I post on Facebook, and that there are a lot of just overlapping posts.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I live my story out loud. I love cycling. People know that. I love to help other people. I help people for free. I help people that pay me very, very well to help them. I'm involved in nonprofits, helping people, because I love that. But, people see in my jam is I love to help people go from, again, what I talked about before. I want you to be the best version of yourself that you want to be. So, I get people reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn that just need help on something. And it's like, that person does not have the capacity and the ability to pay for a professional service. But I have the capacity and the ability to freely give them something with no encumbrances. Sure, I'm happy to help. I have people that reach out to me on LinkedIn that have the capacity and the ability to pay for my professional services, and I'm happy to charge them for that, and they're thrilled to pay for the value of what I'm bringing. That's great. But LinkedIn, know who you are, have your brand, and then freely be willing to give to others. Live that abundant life on your LinkedIn. And when you do that, a lot of good things will come to you, and sometimes they're not financial.
But you spend a lot of energy promoting other people and other, by extension, products and companies. And I see that far more than, how awesome Mitch is.
Well, I'm not that awesome.
Well,
I'm highly overrated.
You're pushing other people forward.
Yeah. So coming back to like earlier on, I was all about lifting myself up, elevating myself, my narcissist fill in the blank. That word that's so terrible I can't even say it. The word that shall be named remain wordless. So as I was getting my jam about really, helping others, I realized that I have a voice on LinkedIn. I've got 17 or 18,000 followers. I get a million views a year. I can use that for other people's good.
Yeah.
So when I see people that I believe in, I want to talk about it. I see products and services that I think have done a great job. I want to talk about it. I write a lot of content about customer experience.
Yeah, sure.
Last week, true story, I was in Madison, Wisconsin. It's on last week's post. I wrote a customer experience story about meeting a gentleman named John at a Sheridan in Madison. I'm looking for the gym. I see him in the hallway. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. He goes, "Hey, can you tell me the gym?" I'm like, it's right or left, or it's straight, or it's backwards. It could be on a different floor. He's like, "Hey, how about I just show you where it's at?" I'm like, "Cool." So we're walking along. I said, "So what do you do here, John?" He goes, "Well, they say I'm the head engineer." And I'm like, "Bro, you're so much more than that." And then I start telling him what we're walking along and talking. I'm just letting it all kind of transpire. We get to the gym, and then I tell John what I experienced. I just said, "You're so much more than a chief engineer. Let me tell you what I experienced." And then I said, "Can I tell your story?" And he was really kind of I go, "No, I write about this on LinkedIn. I also write about when people suck," which I've done before, but I'm more on the positive side. I said, "Can I tell you a story?" He's like, "Sure." It wasn't pitching him. It wasn't him to pitch him. But I wanted to tell the story about this is what it looks like when somebody gets it right.
Yeah.
Check this out. We talk about Horst Schultz, the Ritz-Carlton, and what they do in the Ritz-Carlton, which is using one of his pieces last week at a workshop in L.A. But I'm like, man, this guy. I don't know. It's not like somebody taught him that. It was like in his DNA of how he engaged the world around him. And then I got to meet some of the other staff at the Sheraton, and I was like, can I tell you something? I'm just talking to him. I'm like, he's like, double his pay, whatever.
Yeah.
But when people get it right, I want to celebrate that. When companies get it right, I want to celebrate that.
That's great.
Because there's so much negativity in the world.
Yeah.
Let's find a way to catch other people doing things well and talk about it. So, yeah.
That's great.
It was a blast.
All right, so we're going to land the plane here in a few minutes. So what's on your Audible playlist right now? What are you listening to?
Let's see. How to Get Bruce to Be My Friend. Okay, so Audible.
What's a good book that you've really latched onto lately?
Yeah. The New Extraordinary Leader by Zenger and Folkman. I am just finishing up right now.
Yep.
The New Extraordinary Leader. Loving that. Other ones that I've really enjoyed recently. Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. I've been through that a few times.
Nice.
Unreasonable Hospitality by Will.
I like that.
Fantastic. Pinnacle by Steve Preet and Greg Cleary. I'm kind of biased because I consult on that. I did do a what do you call it? I don't even know what to call it. Fiction. I did one of those. What do you call it? Tom Clancy 0 Hour, which is great. Coaching for Performance, Atomic Habits. I mean, these are just
Atomic Habits. Now that's a classic. That's
oh
a great.
Gosh.
What a great book. Very
Yeah.
tactical. You put that thing into practice like day one.
Fantastic book by Jonah Berger. Love this. People that are looking to understand customer experience. Contagious by Jonah Berger. And Dan Gingiss. I'm a huge fan of Gingiss. He's got great web content. I subscribe to his stuff. I get it all the time.
Okay.
I feel like a crack addict. It's called The Experience Maker. Love it. Dan, I love you, man. Dan Gingiss, I love you. You're awesome.
We'll get him on the podcast next.
Oh, you would have a great time with him. Yeah, so, I mean.
That's a great list.
I've got hundreds of books. Do Hard Things by Steve Magnus. I've given that out to a ton of people. And, the most recent one is The Path to the Pinnacle by Cleary. And so, yeah, those are just some of my light reading topics.
Nice. All right, so if you had to... This is kind of the classic question on this podcast.
The question within the question?
The question. It's really the question that is the question. So is
Delete
your
everything else.
career consuming you, or are you consuming your career?
I am definitely on inbox number 2.
Great. And what does that look
I
like?
have not always been. I have been in the careers consuming me category.
Yes.
I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get everything that you want out of it. And then when your career is consuming you, you can get everything you want out of it. But then when you have all that in the bucket and you look at it, it's like, what? What am I doing here?
Right.
It's like the guy who climbs the corporate ladder to get to the top and realizes he doesn't like the view. He's like, you did that to yourself.
Right.
You
Right.
know? So yeah, I'm definitely focused on consuming my career, being very intentional. Even like when I take on new clients. When I was in LA last week, and this lady was asking me about even like how do I get clients? I said I'm on referral only. I don't advertise. I have a set of core values. I'll tell you number 5, and this is what I told this wonderful lady. I said my core value number 5 is no buttholes. I said life's too short. I do not want to work with people that I don't want to really enjoy my time with.
Yes.
And so I am very focused on spending quality time with great people and companies that want to get better and grow and get healthy, whole, and profitable, and not with people that aren't interested in those things.
Well said. That's fantastic.
Here's my 3 again, like catalyze equipment power, healthy, whole, and profitable. That's my other one.
Yeah, I mean, it's all aligns. When that just kind of crosses over every part of your life, you're not faking it, right? I see a lot of people say it, but don't live it. But when it shows up, across all facets of their life, relational, spiritual, emotional, work, all of those, you're living that aligned life. That's fantastic. All right, any kind of last comments for the listeners, anything that maybe I didn't ask that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say for the listeners, if this has at all been encouraging to you, and you're saying, okay, I want to take some of those things that I heard that Mitch was talking about and do something with it. Back to one of the things that I said early on is make it count, make your life count. Pick something that you want to make it matter for that is not for you. Not make it count like, be able to make another $1 million so you can get a place on 30A.
Yeah.
Or actually now it's like half a place on 30A. Mm-hmm. Make it count to where you're really making a difference in other people's lives. We talk about, when you're going from, your journey to success, people are trying to be successful, and what's after that. And we talk about significance or making an impact. But be looking at how can I make, you could be 25 listening to this, you could be 55, you could be 75. How can I make an impact in other people's lives with the time that I have left? Because, man, the last time I checked, this is a quote from a pastor, he said the last time he checked, the mortality rate was hovering right around 100%, give or take.
That's right.
Nobody's getting out of here alive, and make it count.
That's great.
Not for you, but for others.
Thank you, Mitch. How can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you or find you or just ask you some questions, anything at all?
Yeah, so the easiest way is just go to my website, because then it's got how to reach out, and it's symbionic.com. I will spell that now. That's C as in Charlie, Y, M as in Mary, BIONIC. Symbionic.com, and
Great.
They're welcome to reach out to me. Happy to help in any way.
Great. And we'll put that in the podcast notes. Put a link in there so anyone can get to you. Well, Mitch, I got to tell you, this has been a blast. I thank you for picking this great place. I want to give them a plug just because they've been so nice to host us at. It's a Whitetail Bicycle and Coffee Shop.
Yeah.
Yes, right here in downtown Milton, Georgia. It's been just a great treat. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
My pleasure, Bruce. Great to be here, and that was a very nice $13,000 coffee that Sean got us.
You're more than welcome. All right, well, thanks for joining us on Consuming Careers. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us on Consuming Careers. If you've enjoyed the show, please click the follow button in your podcast app so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And if you have a minute, write us a review. We truly appreciate hearing from our listeners. And as always, I'm Bruce Smith, and you've been listening to Consuming Careers.